All right, so you just heard him say there very clearly, total coordination with the White House. It comes as one former Republican lawmaker is letting everyone know where he stands on this issue. Former Congressman David Trott getting blunt, saying Trump is psychologically, morally, intellectually, and emotionally unfit for office, adding, we can only hope Congress impeaches and removes him so we have a choice between two adults in 2020. Joining me now is former Watergate prosecutor Nick Akerman, Margaret Carlson, columnist for the Daily Beast, who's writing about the McConnell-Murkowski divide, and Danielle Moodie Mills, co-host of the podcast Democracy-ish. Great to have everyone with us this evening. Margaret, let me begin with you, if I may, because I think the big question here is there going to be some kind of domino effect now that we've heard from Senator Murkowski? Are we going to see others like perhaps a Mitt Romney, a Susan Collins, maybe even a Cory Gardner in Colorado come forward with their own reservations?
You know, Murkowski is so conscientious, so straightforward. She's so press-averse that as I was typing in her name today, it was auto-corrected as Murkowski, whatever that means, Ed Murrow, perhaps. And others might follow her. I mean, nobody asked for a spine for Christmas, no Senate Republican, but she showed them what it's like to have one by coming out on Christmas Eve and saying that she was disturbed. She didn't like that McConnell was working, quote, hand in glove with Trump, and went as far as he did. You know, the problem for McConnell is he could have done everything he said he blurted out that he was going to do if he hadn't blurted it out. He's becoming more like Trump by doing so. Trump is for immediate gratification. He's impulsive. McConnell's the opposite, but instead of Trump moving towards McConnell, McConnell has moved towards him so that Trump is the de facto majority leader and has probably made it much harder for McConnell to do what he wanted to do. And Murkowski may lead others to follow her as a result.
Hey, Danielle, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Murkowski seems to at least not be afraid to break with the rest of the party. She was the only Republican at the time to vote against Brett Kavanaugh, despite a lot of people rumbling about it. She was the only one who did not vote for him. Is Trump in real danger here, or are we reading too much into what she said about this process?
I try not to have a lot of hope in Republicans these days because they always prove me right, which is that, like Margaret said, they don't ask for the gift of a spine or a conscience or morals for the holidays. That's exactly what they work against. And so while I appreciate Murkowski coming out and saying what more Republicans should be doing, the idea is that we're celebrating somebody for doing their job. She's supposed to be a juror in the Senate with the Senate trial. And so why are we celebrating the fact that she's saying, you know what, I'll listen to the facts, I'll be open-minded, I'll actually hear this case out? That's their job. We should be sneering at Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and the rest of the Republicans who are political ostriches right now and burying their heads in the sand from the facts. So yes, am I a little bit excited on this Christmas holiday? Will I hold, you know, some spirit that Republicans will do the right thing? I guess, but at the end of the day, they have proven to show us who they are. And when people show us who they are, we should believe them. So
to that point, Danielle, really quickly, is Nancy Pelosi doing the right thing by holding these articles and not transmitting them to the Senate, and by doing so, giving Republicans like Lisa Murkowski and others perhaps some space, some time to make these types of comments that add pressure on a Mitch McConnell?
Yes, and you know what? I will say this. I have been the first person to, you know, talk badly about Nancy Pelosi, wondering when impeachment was going to happen, but she is playing the right game right here. Mitch McConnell has illustrated to the world that he has no intention of having a fair trial, that he is lock and step with the White House. So by her holding on to the articles until she understands what this body is going to do is an important case, and it gives the Republicans a little bit of room. Hopefully Mitt Romney and others will join Murkowski, but who knows?
Nick, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because an impeachment is different than a trial. Mitch McConnell certainly wants to portray this as a political process, not a judicial one. He keeps saying this is partisan. He says everyone is going to come in with their own personal biases, which I find a little bit odd, because jurors also come in with biases, but they're supposed to put those aside and look at the facts. He's not even encouraging his own senators to do that.
No, of course not. I mean, the Constitution itself provides for a trial. A trial means that you have witnesses who are examined and cross-examined, that you have documents that become before the fact finders, which in this case is the Senate. What is really going on here, and what the Republicans and certain people like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell dread, is the idea that Donald Trump could be called as a star witness. He is the witness who has the most material information on all of the facts here. If he claims this is so perfect, if he claims that the call was perfect and he did nothing wrong, then why isn't he going to testify? This is not like a criminal trial where the defendant cannot testify and the prosecution cannot call the defendant. That's because this is a civil matter. Trump has no Fifth Amendment privilege in terms of refusing to get up on the witness stand. He has to get up if he's called.
Oh, wow.
And if he is testifying, there's no way he can talk himself out of this. That's the problem that the Republicans have. The facts are so overwhelming that Donald Trump was using the people's money to shake down the president of Ukraine. And he can't talk himself out of this. He can be cross-examined. He's going to lie on it, but the lies aren't going to do any good in light of the facts upon which he can be cross-examined.
It sounds like you're saying there's no wiggle room, that if Mitch McConnell opens the door for at least one witness, if he doesn't have this ironclad, meaning that the Republicans really shut this thing down before it even starts, we may end up with President Trump taking the witness stand.
If I were the prosecutor for the House, the first witness I would call is Donald J. Trump. Put him up on that witness stand. First, get a subpoena from Justice Roberts. If the subpoena doesn't do it, I'd ask for a bench warrant. And if he still refuses to come, the jury of senators has the right to take an adverse inference, just like you do in any civil case, if somebody refuses to testify or takes the Fifth Amendment because a truthful answer would tend to incriminate them. That inference can be taken against Donald Trump, and on that basis alone, he should be removed from office.
You think he would do that, given the fact that, he's tweeted saying he may answer questions by the House when they were looking into his impeachment?
Well, sure, he takes it whenever it suits his advantage. In the House, I'm being denied due process because I can't testify, I can't go in and give my side of the story. Well, the trial is where somebody gives their side of the trial, their story. He has been accused. He's been, in a sense, indicted. That's what an impeachment is. And this is his chance to come in and show the American people that he did nothing wrong. He just can't do that.
Margaret, let me get your thoughts on Mitch. Sorry.
Amy, let me just say, I'm not a prosecutor.
Right.
Hi, Nick. But I watch a lot of Law and Order. And Donald Trump would be the last witness I would call after I called Pompeo and Mulvaney and Bolton. Because, yes, he's going to lie. And, yes, Attorney General Barr will say he can't be prosecuted for it. But you would have all these other statements, all these other witnesses, so it wouldn't matter if he lied.
Just the
and maybe
opposite.
you wouldn't call him at all.
No, I would always, every civil case I've ever had, I always put the defendant on first. You lock him into his story, you confront him with all of the contrary evidence, and then you bring on Pompeo. None of these people are going to go down for Donald Trump. This is not like Watergate, where Nixon sent all of his men into the grand jury, into the Senate Select Committee, and they all lied, wound up being charged with perjury, and went to jail.
Margaret, I'm going to go with the Watergate prosecutor here over the Law and Order episode, but nothing against Law and Order. But let me just get your thoughts really quickly, Margaret, about Mitch McConnell here, because there is an op-ed out in his in the local paper there in Kentucky, pretty much calling him out, saying that short of declaring war, the Senate is about to conduct its gravest and most serious constitutional obligation to exercise the sole power to try impeachments. All senators should take their obligation of faithful impartiality seriously, especially McConnell. History is watching, and it will be a harsh judge. The writer, he's going to join us later in the program. But Margaret, give me your reaction to what Dave Trott there said.
Well, McConnell was in a bind of sorts. He's running for re-election. The deadline for a primary challenger is January 28th. Trump could have conjured one up in time to challenge McConnell had McConnell not done his bidding. On the other hand, McConnell has to raise his right hand in an oath in which he swears to be impartial after he's already sworn he's not going to be impartial. And I don't know how he does that without perjuring himself. I mean, he would have to have a change of heart akin to Saul on the road to Damascus, to be believed. So I don't know what happens there. His popularity is already way down in Kentucky. The Republican governor, who was supported by Trump with 2 rallies, lost anyway. He wasn't popular, but he lost anyway. So McConnell is hanging out there, having thrown in his lot so heartily with Trump on impeachment.
All right, everyone stay with me for a second because I want to bring in former Florida Republican Congressman Carlos Corbeil. Congressman, great to have you with us this evening. Lots to break down here, but I want to get your thoughts as a former member of Congress. Mitch McConnell obviously coming under tremendous pressure, at least a little bit, from now his own party with Senator Lisa Murkowski. Should Mitch McConnell be worried about cracks within his own party?
Certainly, Eamon. Here's what happens. Senator Murkowski, her comments are really not a surprise. She's very independent-minded, a true institutionalist, understands that Congress is a co-equal, independent branch of government. But what's going to happen is that now, after these comments by Senator Murkowski, other Republicans, probably those Republicans in vulnerable races in 2020, states like Colorado, Arizona, Maine, those senators, Collins, Gardner, McSally, are going to start getting asked questions about what Senator Murkowski said, and they're going to be under pressure to at least sound to their voters like they want to have a serious trial in the Senate where all the evidence is going to be weighed. So I think people need to look out very closely for how those senators react to Senator Murkowski's comments. And then, of course, if they do follow her, at least in part, then that will increase pressure on Senator McConnell. Remember, this is a Senate Republican majority, but it's only a 3-seat majority, so there's not a whole lot of room for error. So I certainly think that these comments that Senator Murkowski made will have a tail and will be in some way consequential.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a moment and ask you just how confident you are that Republicans won't be intimidated by Donald Trump, because if you cross Donald Trump, you do so at your own peril. Some would argue that perhaps you were somebody who stood up to Donald Trump, you disagreed with him on immigration, and perhaps that was a factor also that led to your loss in Congress. But the question then becomes, do other Republicans fear Donald Trump, that they are not going to step out of line?
Well, Eamon, my case was a little different. I used to represent the most Democratic-leaning district in the country held by a Republican, so I think that actually helped me in my district. But I will say this, the president does demand absolute loyalty. And for some of these senators and representatives that are in swing states, they really do require a unified Republican base. And the bottom line is here, and we haven't discussed this yet tonight, that the court of public opinion is what matters most. Still, House Democrats have not convinced a strong majority of the American people that the president should be removed from office, and that Republican base is solidly behind the president. A lot of these senators and representatives running for re-election as Republicans will need that base's support. So certainly the president does have the power to intimidate, to push members, and to demand that absolute loyalty. We'll see. In the case of Senator Murkowski, Senator Romney, I think Senator Collins as well can be expected to be independent-minded and speak their truth. Either way, for other senators and representatives, that remains to be seen.
Let me play you really quickly another soundbite from Senator Murkowski about not prejudging the case. Listen to this.
For me to prejudge and say there's nothing there, or on the other hand, he should be impeached yesterday, that's wrong. In my view, that's wrong.
Danielle, you look at some of the comments that have been made by senators like Senator Lindsey Graham and others, I think Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, they've pretty much concluded that the president has done nothing wrong. They're not even waiting for the facts. They're just basing it on what has been said in the House impeachment hearings.
And that's the problem, Eamon, is that the constituents that they have need to be making the phone calls, need to be sending emails and saying to them, we want a fair trial. This is wrong. What the president has done, what the House has laid out is problematic. And we know that if this had been Barack Obama, if it had been Bill Clinton, if it had been any Democrat, we know exactly what Republicans would be doing right now. So the fact is that it is up to us, the people, to call on our representatives that we elected to do the right thing. That's the only way that they're going to do the right thing, is if we demand it.
Nick, very quickly, our constitutional framers probably not envision a situation where the Senate, under the control of the same party as the president, would be so much in lockstep with the president on something as serious as impeachment. This must be like a worst case scenario for...
I would think the framers are rolling in their grave right now, because this is exactly the kind of situation that they thought impeachment ought to be used for. And then you've got a president who's basically bullied the entire Senate Republican group into going his way. Now, the question is whether or not others will have the courage that Lisa Murkowski has to move this forward in the way that the framers envisioned it.
All right, Nick Ackerman, Margaret Carlson, Danielle Moodie Mills, and former Congressman Carlos Corbeo, thank you very much for joining us this evening.